All right, welcome to class. So like I was saying, they've changed up Zoom a little bit. Hopefully this will record. So we're going to be talking about Comet 3I Atlas in tonight's class. And I want to start off with a update from Stephan Burns because he brings up something really interesting in this. This thing is going to pass right through the asteroid belt, which begs the question, what is it going to do with, because this is like a billiards table, in other words, things bouncing off of one another. So um, I think this is going to be an event that stands out, sort of like Schumacher leaving nine that crashed into Jupiter in the 90s. Let's see what Stefan says here. Guys, make sure,
Yes, we're only beginning to
let me
see
know if you can
depth
hear this audio because Zoom is doing some weird stuff.
asteroid belt. And this is something that not many people have really commented on, or at least the scientific community hasn't really done a deep dive into what this means because there is a non-zero probability that 3I Atlas hits something in the main asteroid belt, which causes it to redirect
In other words, it's almost certain it's going to hit something.
in its orbit with its velocity and with its trajectory. Because right now it's coming in with a hyperbolic orbit at around 60 kilometers per second from, it seems, an interstellar source. This could be from a different star system. It came in from the constellation of Sagittarius, which is general where the center of the Milky Way is. And there is some interesting research out there by Avi Loeb that shows that a red dwarf star is dense enough to cause a planet to fracture and also eject objects at velocities right around what we're observing with 3I Atlas. So perhaps that is its primordial origin. It was originally some sort of protoplanet around a red dwarf that fractured, and this is a fragment of that. The nucleus size for 3I Atlas is estimated to be around 1 kilometer in diameter, all the way up to perhaps 50 kilometers in diameter. It really depends on the dust envelope and that albedo. We have no direct observations of the nucleus of 3I Atlas at this moment in time, but we know that the carbon dioxide rich coma, this envelope of dust and gas and a bit of plasma surrounding 3I Atlas, is approximately 700,000 kilometers across, which is half the diameter of the sun. So 3i Atlas is very bizarre. It is forming a tail now, as we see here with this video taken by Gemini. This was
Yeah.
August 27th, 2025. So as I'm recording this, some time has elapsed now. And right now, in fact, the best time to take imagery of 3i Atlas because it'll be performing a superior conjunction with the sun as viewed from Earth around October 21st, meaning that it's Earth, sun, and then 3i Atlas on the other side. Once it gets within about 15 degrees of the sun from our geocentric perspective, it's going to be really difficult to make out 3i Atlas. But this journey through the asteroid belt is significant. Now, it's very unlikely that 3i Atlas.
Now this is a computer rendition of the known asteroids in the asteroid belt. So you see what I'm saying? It's absolutely going to hit something as it goes through. Now, what will the consequence be? Right? Because all of this is pretty much set in motion and has been for a very long time, and with no disturbance or no perturbation. But now we enter, some perturbation into the scenario. We may see something come from this.
Atlas will interact with anything. It's about a 1 in a billion chance for when we send a space probe through the main asteroid belt that it's going to interact with anything. And those odds are probably a little bit higher because 3i Atlas is a lot bigger, has its own gravity, and there's electromagnetic forces as well, but still it's a very low probability. But no one's done an official calculation on all the objects that we know of in the main asteroid belt and 3i Atlas and whether there's going to be any close calls, because there is a tremendous amount of overlap between these objects, their orbits, and their inclinations, and the trajectory of 3i Atlas through the inner solar system. So we have a lot of interesting things happening right now with 3i Atlas because of its very unusual characteristics. This complex dusty plasma which surrounds it is interacting with the overall electromagnetic system of the heliosphere. And in fact, there are a lot of electromagnetic dynamics in play with the asteroid belt. And so perhaps we'll see some interesting interactions between 3i Atlas and the main asteroid belt during this next month of its flyby. And before we go further into the asteroid belt and the movement of 3i Atlas through that, let's look at this still image of 3i Atlas taken by Gemini South. This is from the same data set of observations. And so we see here that it has a very nice large coma, and it is starting to elongate into a tail. So the sunward direction is this way. This is anti-sunward. Originally, when we first observed it, when it was further out, there was a little bit more gas and dust pushing out in the sunward direction, likely due to preferential sublimation on that side. But now we're seeing it get kind of pushed out into a tail, though it's not as obvious as a lot of comets. A lot of comets have these really long tails with these very intricate structures. They form these ion tails, dust tails. Specific elements can form tails like iron. So you can have multiple tails with one comet. 3i Atlas is still not that close to the sun, so it is forming a tail, but it is not anything really spectacular at this moment in time. So it's going to be really interesting to see specifically how it evolves over the next few months as it gets closer and closer to the sun. It's perihelion. It's the closest approach to the sun will be on roughly October 29th. And we have that superior conjunction with 3i Atlas. So again, Earth, Sun, 3i Atlas, where we're not going to see it, that will be on around October 21st. Its closest approach to Mars is October 3rd. And so a lot of people are speculating that this is some sort of alien technology or craft or something like that.
Now imagine it as it goes behind the sun and then reemerges, because I was thinking about this in one of the codes that I was working, a star will come. And also what's in Numbers 24 with Balaam's prophecy, that it talks about a star will come from Jacob. Now in Joseph's dream, his mother is the moon, his father is the sun, and his brothers are the Maseroth, right? And they all bow to him, or the whole universe bows to him, right? And so if we're thinking about the Maseroth and what is written in Numbers when it talks about this star will come from Jacob, who is Jacob? The sun. So this would be something that fits along that kind of thing. Now, is that the fulfillment? I don't know, because they've been looking at this thing even since the Bethlehem star, stars that are coming out of nowhere. And I'm talking about moving stars, not gas giants, right?
In that case, if it is targeting Mars, it would want to deploy around October 3rd. And we're just entertaining all possibilities here. Now, the other thing that few people have talked about is that the asteroid belt is composed of billions of objects, going from sand size, like a sand grain, all the way up to Ceres, which is the dwarf planet in the asteroid belt that makes about 1/3 of the mass, has a diameter about 900 kilometers. So there's a tremendous range of variability within the asteroid belt. And it's not just objects that were formed during the initial protoplanetary or protostellar disk phase in place. A lot of the objects in the main asteroid belt actually came in from outside the orbit of Neptune. They're trans-Newtonian objects. And so the main asteroid belt is this repository of a whole bunch of different objects from across the solar system. And therefore, if we're talking about 3i Atlas from some sort of alien or technological perspective, then you should consider the possibility that it could slip right into the asteroid belt, and that's where it decides to stay. Because Ceres at 900 kilometers in diameter is quite a bit bigger than 3i Atlas. In fact, there are thousands of objects in the main asteroid belt that have diameters greater than 40 kilometers. And the upper estimate for the diameter of 3i Atlas, based on some recent data, is 50 kilometers. It's much, much, much larger than most objects, comets, asteroids, etc. So there is this possibility it could slip in, but that would necessarily almost mean that it has some sort of advanced technology inherent with it. Because unless it was to do a collision that then redirects it into a stable orbit around the sun in the asteroid belt, it's going to continue to fly by. But let us check out its orbit, because it actually does pass right through the asteroid belt, whereas a lot of comets do not because of their high orbital inclination. 3i Atlas is 175 degrees inclined in retrograde motion, meaning it's only 5 degrees off from the ecliptic plane. It's passing right through the meat and the body of the asteroid belt.
Not only that, it's going to be there for a longer period of time. If you notice those other objects, they were coming at a higher rate, higher angle of attack. This thing is coming in at a more of across the plane, so it's going to be going through the asteroid belt for a long period of time. It's destined to hit something. That's for certain.
Here we have the web application, the Sky Live, which allows us to see the solar system and various objects that we put into the solar system. And so I have 3i Atlas here. Its orbit is in green because that is the object that's selected. We see it here, and this is actually set for the 8th of October now, but we can go back to today to see where 3i Atlas is. And we'll see that it's already well within the asteroid belt. So we zoom out. I only have the first 20 asteroids detected in this visualization, because that's actually kind of the limit that I can put in. So asteroids 1 through 20, which are the most well-known ones. For example, asteroid 1 is Ceres, and then you also have Vesta, you have Psyche, Astrea, Juno, Metis, a whole bunch of asteroids, but only the first 20. There are hundreds of thousands of large asteroids. And so we see as 3i Atlas is moving through the solar system, let me hit play, it's cutting right through the main body.
See what I mean? See, like the angle of this asteroid here is pretty extreme. This is cutting right through, so it's going to remain in an area where it's absolutely going to hit something, 700,000 miles across. That is not a small object, so it's bound to hit something. Imagine a billiards table, right? Those objects are going to bounce or redirect or whatever. And our planet, which is here, which is coming around the moon, as this is coming through this side, we're coming this way. Could we see debris? That is the question.
Body of the asteroid belt, because the orbital eccentricity of the asteroid belt is about 0.4 or less. And then also the inclination is about 30 degrees or less. So that's quite high. I mean, for example, we see here asteroid number 2, Pallas, right there. Check out its orbital inclination. It's tremendously high. It has a very high value, whereas 3i Atlas here is effectively coming in 5-degree angle. So it's cutting right through this asteroid belt because a lot of them are significantly above or below the ecliptic plane. And we see 3i Atlas will pass below the ecliptic plane in about November, December. So I think it's at.
All right, you guys. So it is no secret that when we have a significant thing in the solar system, I've been looking for Planet X, Wormwood, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it. This event that causes what we see in Revelation called Wormwood, which seems to me like debris, because it's not just one object. It is, it talks about 150-pound objects coming and impacting the Earth. And some are even more catastrophic. And then waves roaring, it seems like the Earth is in travail. That can only be with some kind of event that we would see in Revelation, and also, what it says in Isaiah, where the earth is turned upside down. Now, this is only 20 objects. There are thousands and thousands and thousands that are out there. This is bound to hit something. And as we are, where we are. This is coming this way. We are coming this way. So at some point, well, actually there, we're not swinging out that far. It's really there. But at some point, whatever's knocked out of this gravitational dance here, at some point later, we may run into. I'm just speculating here.
Actually more so later in November. But right now it's above it, but we see it intersecting right through there. You'll see some close calls, but you won't see any direct, impacts or contacts with this transit with these 20 objects. But keep in mind that there are hundreds of thousands.
See how the Earth is coming back around, and the path is right here. So it's already come through here and may have hit things that we may run into. You see what I mean? Or we may see come into the atmosphere. We may see, one hell of a meteor storm. I don't know. I'm just speculating. When I'm looking for these kind of things that are Bible prophecy and this kind of thing that has never come before. And by the way, the first one that came through was called Oumuamua in Hawaii, which means the messenger that comes first, meaning there's other things coming. And by the way, I don't think Atlas is the last thing. I think ultimately we're going to see whatever blotted out the sun at the crucifixion. That's my running theory right now.
Thousands of large objects. There's millions of smaller ones, and ultimately there's billions of objects in the asteroid belt, and they have their own unique interactions within the solar system, not only gravitationally, but also electromagnetically, just like 3i Atlas. Let's check it out. The asteroid belt is very interesting because, again, it has this huge population of objects. Whereas you go to Earth's orbit, you have the Earth, you have the Moon. There are some near-Earth asteroids, but there's not that many. There are millions, billions of objects in the main asteroid belt. We see near-Earth asteroids there in blue. Here's the main asteroid belt there in this orange color, and then there's other regions that go even beyond that. You have Trojans, you have Centaurs. There's a whole bunch of very interesting things as it relates to the asteroid belt, and it is one of our primary windows into how the solar system formed. One of the new things that we've learned is that a lot of the asteroid belt is actually made up with these trans-Newtonian objects. And so the NICE model, which is a gravitational model that explains the outward migration of the gas giants, also hypothesizes that that would destabilize objects in the Kuiper belt that were forming and have them migrate into stable orbits within the main asteroid belt. This is interesting because trans-Newtonian objects are quite a bit different than main belt asteroids. Main belt asteroids have a density of about 2.6, 2.7 grams per centimeter cubed, whereas a trans-Newtonian object has a density of 1 gram per centimeter cubed. That's less than the bulk density of the sun, which is about 1.4 grams per centimeter cubed. So they're very rich in volatiles and also water, and they're structurally weak. And because of this off-gassing, they can, as they get close to the sun, they off-gas pretty readily. That's causing there to be this coma that can surround them, also water, ice, and dust particles. And so, as we've been talking about with 3i Atlas, in this dusty complex gas plasma surrounding it that has a lot of electromagnetic dynamics to it, the same is true of a lot of these objects in the asteroid belt.
All right, so my question is, will we see galactic lightning? This is something that the scientist at Siding Spring was wanting to know when this comet passed over Mars. I think it was 2014, 2015, around that time. And they theorized that there was going to be some galactic lightning, and there was. It's called plasma. It's lightning is scalable. You can scale it from very micro to galactic. It is amazing, right? And the power of it is tremendous. These same scientists believed that it was plasma that is what actually carved out the Grand Canyon and also the Marianas Trench on Mars. Anyway, what will this highly charged object, what's it going to do when it comes through here? We might see something completely biblical and amazing. And by the way, I'm looking for the return of Yeshua. So these kind of things are bound to happen. We're going to see whatever blotted out the sun and shook the earth, and and was seen as a sword at the time of Bar Kokhba and the Jewish rebellion. This is after the destruction of the temple. There was an object in the sky. Josephus writes about it. The Chinese astronomers write about it. Something theorized that an object came into our solar system at the time of the birth of Yeshua. This is the Bethlehem star. And at the crucifixion, it is in front of the sun. 40 years later, at the destruction of the temple, there was a star that looked like a sword above Jerusalem. I believe it was the same object that was going back out of the solar system. This is my theory right now. Okay. So at his return, it's my theory that we're going to see that same object reappear, and the effects of that will be what we see in Revelation. Okay, so this is why I'm very interested in this kind of stuff.
On different scales. So the smaller an object is, the larger the dust grains can be surrounding it and kind of levitating in place, whereas a larger object will have smaller dust grains. So there is also a size distribution here. And one of the just very basic things to think about as we explore into plasma physics here is just the electrostatic field. So you have an object and it has a certain gravity based off of its mass. And that's a force pulling things down. But you also form these electric fields that have an electrostatic potential to them, which, like rubbing a balloon on your head and the hair will stand up, will cause things to kind of hold in place. And the smaller a dust grain is, the stronger of an effect that electrostatic force has. So it depends on the size of an object and the electrostatic field. But what happens is there is a natural boundary where the two are in equilibrium, and this is where you'll get dust grains that resonate with that equilibrium to hang out. And so you will have these layers of dust grains going out from an object that has an electrostatic field around it. And well, these asteroids have these electrostatic fields because you have solar radiation and the solar wind causing ionization and also off-gassing of asteroids and these trans-Newtonian asteroids, which are in there, and more. For example, Eros, which is an asteroid, has a levitating dust layer with a grain size of about 2 millimeters. Eros is a smaller asteroid, not the smallest, but compared to the moon, for example, where its levitating dust layer is calculated to be around 0.07 millimeters, because the moon is much larger, and so gravity is much stronger on the moon compared to the asteroid Eros. So you can have these larger dust grains in that equilibrium spot versus the moon. And we know these dust physics because of a lot of our lunar missions, where they notice these dust clouds that formed on the moon. In fact, lunar dust is one of the big problems that we face in terms of getting back to the moon, because it's very abrasive and corrosive and causes a bunch of problems. And if you want to set up a permanent lunar base, you have to figure out lunar dust. So we have also, for example, the dwarf planet Ceres doing this off-gassing of volatiles, and there's this non-differentiated layer within Ceres, whereas other asteroids are more differentiated. They have a more layered structure to them, like Vesta. There's even evidence with the asteroid Vesta that used to have a core dynamo early on in its history, which means it generated a magnetic field. That's because there is a remnant magnetization on the surface of Vesta. And Vesta is smaller, but has like these differentiated layers, whereas the dwarf planet Ceres has some differentiation, but it also is just a little bit more uniform throughout its interior structure. And there's like this slushy layer that exists, this low viscosity layer within the interior structure of Ceres. So there's a lot of very interesting things. The gravitational effects can cause there to be this off-gassing. You have these electrostatic dust layers that form. And what happens is, in space, in general, you have the solar wind in our interplanetary space. You have the solar wind full of plasma going out in all directions. We're all contained within the heliosphere. So we're all immersed in this bubble of plasma. Well, it's not just plasma. There's also a tremendous amount of dust in the interplanetary medium. In fact, the particle densities, a dust particle or a plasma ion particle are about equivalent. And so the moment you introduce dust grains into the equation, the physics gets really complex. And plasma physics is already still not completely understood by a long shot. It's already very complex. That's why they call it complex dusty plasma, because now the dust grains are exerting all their own effects on the plasma and vice versa, and you still have to account for gravity to some degree, and it gets really complex really quickly. So not only does interplanetary space and just the solar wind contain dust, and therefore it's all a complex dusty plasma, so too does the asteroid belt, especially the asteroid belt, because of all these objects, and they occasionally have collisions and pump out these dust grains. We can see that here with the DART mission, where we actually launched an object at an asteroid and impacted it, and it created a very significant dust plume around it. It took some time to dissipate. And so all of these objects, or at least a lot of them, are interacting with the interplanetary magnetic field in unique ways. For example, Ceres, it interacts with the solar wind. It actually causes the solar wind to pile up in front of it, and then it creates this longer disturbed tail region behind it going out 250 Ceres radii downstream, which is a pretty significant distance when that radius is about 450 kilometers. So you have all these interesting effects. 3I Atlas is flying through the main asteroid belt, right through the body of it, with this coma that is about half the diameter of the sun. It's going to keep getting bigger as it gets closer to the sun. It is now forming a tail, which we know that there's these unique filamentary electric currents that flow through the tails of comets. And what we often see is that comets trigger or seem to be associated with pretty intense solar activity. We can look at Comet Shu-Chin-Shan in October 2020.
In other words, we could possibly see some significant activity in the skies, you guys. And by the way, this is going through and up to the spring feast in March. This is when it'll come back around the sun. We'll be able to see it sometime in around Passover time.
See that? We can look at Oumuamua, which did not have a coma or a tail in 2017, but that was perfectly aligned with some really intense solar activity. We also had Comet Pan-STARRS in 2013, which perfectly lined up with some intense solar activity that launched towards Earth, and it was all perfectly aligned to do so. So this transit of 3I Atlas through the solar system is going to be very dynamic, and you don't have to think it's aliens for that to be the case. Just the normal physics of our solar system, which we do not understand completely, by the way, allow for a whole range of potential for 3I Atlas interacting with the sun.
You hear that, a whole range. So there's a whole slew of possibilities of things, and it's, of course, it's all speculation. This has never been seen before, especially an object this size. Just look at the number. This is obviously a computer representation of known objects, and this is not even giving us the unknown objects. These are the known objects that they are tracking. Okay, so this is without a doubt high probability this is going to hit or interact with something.
The other planets, objects in the asteroid belt, and more. And you can't rule out the potential of a collision. This is a huge object. It is possible that something runs into it, or it runs into something. We haven't identified all the big objects in the asteroid belt. We're finding more and more literally every single day. There is a non-zero potential that it gets deviated from its
All right, a non-zero potential, meaning a high probability that this is going to hit something.
Course. And we hope that it doesn't get deviated towards the Earth, but technically it's a non-zero potential. So we have to be very, very mindful of these objects. We have to find them as soon as we can. We have to track out their trajectories. We should also be performing the calculations on what may happen with the objects that we know of. There's a reason why we've been putting so much energy and effort into advancing our technology and computers and Moore's law. And if we're not doing these calculations,
All right, so if you can imagine opening your washer when it's on a spin cycle, and this is, you know, again, this is probably not scalable, but the disturbance of an object being introduced into something that is already in a centrifugal force, right? This is something that's centrifugal or synergizing. You know, it's been in these orbits for a very long time, and now you got a foreign object that's coming through, sort of like a billiards table, and now things are knocking about and they're bouncing off one another. Um, you know, what is the end game to that, right?
which we have the ability to do so now with our supercomputers, then what are we doing? Are we just going to go off of blind hope that everything's going to be fine? Like, we really should be doing these calculations as soon as we get them. That's what I would hope. That's what makes sense to me, but I'm just one person. But one other thing to keep in mind, too, as it relates to 3i Atlas interacting with the solar system and potentially with Earth through some of these more indirect means, like its dusty complex plasma, is that we find that when you have dust clouds in the solar wind, it can strengthen the interplanetary magnetic field and overall cause it to be enhanced in strength. And we know that within the solar system, there is an inwardly flowing electric current that flows from the outer reaches of the solar system to the sun. And so you have these dust grains which take on a charge, whether it's positive or negative. They typically will take on electrons because electrons are highly mobile and they'll stick to the dust grains. But if there's a lot of photoionization of that dust grain, it can release those electrons and take on a positive charge. This is what makes it a complex dusty plasma, because now you have these different dust grains across a whole spectrum of size with positive and negative charge interacting with plasma in a whole bunch of ways. It gets really crazy, but these could be generated and they're off-gassing from 3i Atlas, hypothetically, and then flowing down this inwardly flowing radial electric current, and therefore, as it sweeps through the inner solar system, cutting within the orbit of Mars, this could create these packets of dust, which then could hit the Earth and trigger enhanced geomagnetic activity, especially if that combines with solar activity that happens to line up with that. So there's a whole bunch of dynamics that are only beginning to piece together, but if things line up in a certain way, this transit of 3i Atlas could be a lot more dynamic than people are saying, and we don't have to go with the aliens explanation, though it's certainly useful, in my opinion, to look at these objects from that perspective, because we are not alone out there and we should be prepared for all possibilities. And as we continue building out our rocket technology and our understanding of space, eventually we're going to become a solar system species and eventually interstellar species. So this in many ways is a wake-up call, not only from the space weather perspective and also just from the maybe 3i Atlas impacting the Earth perspective. Again, that's a super low probability, but we should be doing those calculations with all the objects that we have in our ephemeride data for the asteroid belt and near Earth asteroids and more. It's also a bit of a wake-up call as it relates to, well, is there maybe some sort of advanced technology or other species out there, intelligence, life, whatever, that is interested in what's happening in our solar system? It's a good question to ask. So more and more evidence is coming out that 3i Atlas is a comet. It is growing a tail, though slowly, and it doesn't look like any comet that we've really seen thus far. It is a unique object having come in from interstellar space. It's only the third ever interstellar object that we have observed. But you have to also keep in mind with all this is that there's a lot of different ways that you can explain things. For example, not saying this is the case, but this object theoretically could have been in the Oort cloud and just accelerated to extremely high velocity. The velocity is traveling in right now, which is about 60 kilometers per second. All we know is exactly when we found it and the measurements that we've had since. Its orbit before we observed it is interpreted, right? It's interpolated based off of its current orbital trajectory. So while we think that's probably the case, we can't 100% conclusively say, oh, yeah, it came in from interstellar space. That's the most likely outcome, makes the most sense. That's what the data suggests, but we can't conclusively say that 100% with confidence. Nor can we 100% with confidence absolutely claim that it is a comet. That's why I've just been calling it an interstellar object, because it's been defined a lot of normal cometary behavior. It's only now beginning to form a tail. It's coma that's surrounding it. This kind of bubble of gas and dust and plasma is huge, half the size of the sun. It's much bigger than normal comets. It's a bizarre object. We'll keep tracking it here on the channel. So if you'd like to stay up to date with 3i Atlas, then please subscribe. Again, I've been your host, Stephan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. We also...
Very interesting object. All right, so let's look at Chris has got a presentation too on this. I am still working on a couple of codes that I got on this. One is called A Star Shall Come, and it's based off of Balaam's prophecy. Here's what Chris had to say just a couple of days ago.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my channel. It is September 6, 2025. Comet 3i Atlas has a nickel cyanide content. And means of thinking about that, I have this video up here about how you smelt nickel out of the earth, which is slightly different than what we're seeing in outer space. And I have nickel cyanide, which is a toxic carcinogenic. Okay, type this in, read all about that. This here, I'll post the video in the description. You can watch this video all on your own. But basically, nickel all on its own is a very brittle element. Okay, and being an interstellar object in outer space, how it may have formed is quite a bit different than the way that it's formed here on the Earth. Here on the Earth, they actually had to use a thermite reaction in order to bond iron with nickel. And this is the whole idea with these comets that are out there, is that they have a nickel iron content, while this is just pure nickel mixed with cyanide, with carbon. And this is very interesting to them because this is a very brittle, it may be very hard, but it's a very brittle asteroid that has now gone comet. And that's the thing about asteroids. When they go comet, they start destroying themselves. They're very destructive nature when you start seeing all the outgassing. Matter of fact, Comet Ison and Comet Siding Spring, this is how they broke apart after. They started outgassing, and from the sheer force of the solar winds, literally smashed them apart. And of course, Comet Siding Spring had a little bit of help there from Mars. When you start having these outgassing vents, you also start having fissures and fracture points where they can form, where you used to have solid matter but has now turned into gas and evaporated. This comet could very well end up as chunks if it gets too close to Jupiter, is what I'm saying. And if you take an even better, closer look, you can see that Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter are all going to be within a small quadrant of our solar system, which is going to increase the tidal forces on Comet 3i Atlas exponentially as it's getting close to Jupiter or even passing. This thing could end up just like Shoemaker-Levy in chunks. I mean, look how close this thing is going to pass to Jupiter. Come March 11th, around this time, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Now he's right about this, and I've known about this since Comet Schumacher-Levy 9. I don't know if you guys remember that, but in the early 90s, there was a comet that broke apart into 9 pieces, and they say it looked like a string of pearls, but it was drawn into Jupiter's gravitational pull. Matter of fact, Jupiter's got a nickname called a comet killer. Just like the sun, where there's sun diving comets being pulled into the gravitation, the same thing happens with Jupiter. And so it is a possibility that either there'll be a plasma discharge, or could it be pulled into its gravitational pull and impact? That is a possible. I mean, everything is possibility at this point.
15, 16, 17. Now remember these dates, they're very important because now I'm going to roll this clock back to October. Sometime between the 1st and the 3rd of October of this year, 2025, Comet 3I Atlas will make a perihelion with Mars. And as we've been seeing, the outgassing is humongous. It is highly reflective, it is highly conductive, and it is highly poisonous. Don't worry, I've got a Bible code that's going to knock your socks off. But first things first, forward 1 month to October 2025, and this is Aish. Again, no affiliations with me or my channel. I do not speak for them. Look what's on October 2025 on the 1st and the 2nd. You got Yom Kippur. You got the 10th day of the 7th month. The 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, happening right around the same time, right at the same time that Comet 3I Atlas will be passing over Mars. Yes, I'm using the Babylonian Chaldean Hillel calendar, but bear with me. It's the only one that I have right now. We can't tell you what these days are going to be on because the next month hasn't started yet. If you're observing the calendar, the next month cannot be calculated. It has to be a
Well, this is fairly accurate. This is when we're having Sukkot. By the way, it's the 7th through the 14th. 15th includes Simchat Torah. So that's accurate.
observed. So this is only being used as an example. If you fast forward to the 15th day, which runs from the 15th day of the 7th month to the 22nd day of the 7th month, that's the Feast of Tabernacles, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that. That's very important in the Bible code I'm about to show you. Actually, around March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th of 2026, you're going to have Purim. And right around the 10th, 11th, you're going to be halfway in between Purim and the end of the solar calendar on the observed calendar. And this is where the Abarli is declared to be. If we take a look at that simulator again around the 1st.
All right, so this is interesting to me because this is going into the springtime. So if you think back to the birth of Yeshua, all right, that they saw the Bethlehem star leading all the way up into the springtime, where the shepherd boys were with newborn lambs. That only happens in the spring. Yeshua was not born in the winter, you guys. We can tell from all the evidence when this was, and it's at the springtime. Just a coincidence? I don't know, but this object is coming through again around that time.
Second,
and I'm speculating. So this is the series of objects.
First, second, third, fourth, and of course up to the 11th here by what is it? The 19th. The 19th. This simulator is projecting that Comet 3I Atlas will have gone through a perihelion with Jupiter. In this projection, this could very well change somewhere around this point here. Here we go. We can see Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. What you're looking here in the matrix is between Psalm 13 and Psalm 18 down here at a page width of 101. This is a minimal skip Bible code, but it is a very interesting Bible code because Psalm 18 is about Yahusha's pavilion, Psalm 18, verse 12. He made darkness his secret place, his pavilion round about him were dark waters, the clouds of the skies. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. Yeah, Psalm 18 and 19 is about the arrival of Wormwood. His pavilion is literally a mobile tabernacle. What you see in Revelation chapter 8, verses 10 and 11 concerning Wormwood, this is a pavilion, a mobile tabernacle. And the tent of meetings that Moses made is a picture perfect image of what's in the heavens, so above as below. And the tent of meetings wandered around the country. It was never in the same place. The same thing as Wormwood. It's always wandering in our solar system. The same thing is happening. And it is Yahusha's mobile tabernacle. So you got to read this from verse 1 to get the full effect of this. To the chief musicians, a psalm of David, the servant of Yahuwah, who spake unto Yahuwah the words of this song, in the day that Yahuwah delivered him from the hands of all of his enemies and from the hands of Saul. And he said, I will love thee, O Yahuwah, my strength. Yahuwah is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my Eli of me, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler, the horns of my salvation, and my high power. I will call upon Yahuwah, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Sorrow of death compass me. The floods of ungodly men make me afraid. Sorrow of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. In my distress, I called upon Yahweh and cried unto my Elohim, and he heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even unto his ears. The earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up as smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. He did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place, his pavilion round about him. Dark waters, thick clouds of the skies, and the brightness before him, his thick clouds passed, hail and coals of fire. Yahuwah also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice, hail and coals of fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomforted them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke. O Yahuwah, at the blast of thy breath of thy nostrils, sent from above, he took me. He drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from them that which hated me, for they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but Yahuwah was my stay. Amen. But you can see this one verse, he bowed the heavens. Do you know what it's like when you see an object in outer space and all the space and time around that object is literally distorted? Like you would see, say, in a black hole, the accretion disk of a black hole. Well, that's what you see in the figure around Yahusha himself. He literally distorts time and space, and the heavens bow at his presence. And verse 11, where it says pavilion, this is the abbreviated form of the word sukkah, and even says his booth. This is a tabernacle, a booth, a cottage, covert, pavilion, tabernacle.
And let me just point out this too, to make this also a connection. The word Nibiru is not just from Stichins, you guys. It's also in the Ethiopic. In the Coptic, that word means it's like sort of like Hebrew, where it sounds like one word. but it's really a phrase, which means because of love, Yah's throne came down. Okay, that's what that word means in the Ethiopic, or excuse me, what is it called? The Ethiopian Ge'ez Bible.
Call a tent, like the tent of meetings. The tent of meetings. The tent of meetings was a picture-perfect representation of wormwood in the heavens, Yahusha's mobile tabernacle, and King David is writing about it in Psalm 18.
So in other words, just like when John sees the new Jerusalem coming down, do you guys know what the shape that is that he sees coming down? He actually sees a shape. Now, if this is coming from somewhere else and comes into our solar system, now I'm thinking of along the lines of physics and laws of nature, right? We're talking about an object that appears, the new Jerusalem coming down. I don't think this is just spiritual. I think it's a real thing. The Bible says that heaven comes down. Okay. So are we talking about a sukkah, his pavilion, his throne room? What does it look like? I mean, we can go so long on this.
In Psalm 19, he's giving you a picture of what it's going to look like and timing of when this shows up. So we can read Psalm 17, verse 15, and literally take what David is saying. Literally, we're talking about the resurrection. And we see this pavilion showing up in the heavens shortly before the resurrection. And thy likeness, King David is talking about Yahusha in his glorified state. He wants to be like Yahusha in his glorified state. And we all know that's not going to happen until the patriarchs we see from the Old Testament, their spirits are resurrected, and they're resurrected right in the promised land. So this is a timely event that we're about to see, and the appearance of wormwood in the heavens, Yahusha's mobile pavilion, his tabernacle. And you see in verse 10, Psalm 18, verse 10, and he rode upon a cherub and did fly. He did fly upon the wings of the wind. That is interesting because at the barley harvest, the pre-tribulation rapture, Jesus, he comes on a cloud. At the end, when we're all coming back with Jesus, he comes riding a horse, a white horse.
All right, let me just stop here. He's still got remnant of pre-trib rapture, and when he's talking about we come back with Yeshua. Now, those that are seen coming with the Messiah are the first fruits of the resurrection when he came out of the ground, out of the grave, you guys. Those are the ones that were seen alive, that were formerly dead. And they went on to heaven in a glorified body, you guys. They didn't die a second death. Okay, even Lazarus and even Moses, who were resurrected and died once, are not going to die twice. And that's how we know that Moses is not one of the witnesses. Okay, it's appointed for once for a man to die and then the judgment. All right, so those people that we see coming back in the clouds are the ones that came out of the grave. That's the first fruits of the resurrection. We are the final harvest, the latter rain. Okay, there's a former harvest and a latter harvest. Okay, and particularly when we talk about certain types of grain, especially wheat. Okay, early summer, latter summer. Anyway,
you see him riding on the cherub. This is not the barley harvest, and this is not the end when we're all coming back to occupy the earth, rule and reigning with for 1,000 years. This is not that event. This is actually, you know what this is talking about? This is your wheat harvest, your first fruits harvest and your wheat harvest from Revelation chapter 14. He comes with the angels. And this is what you see him here coming with the angels. So what David is doing, he's prophesying about the wheat harvest right here. So if all of these data points are connected, they should actually show up in his Bible code. And you know what? They do. We're in the year 5785. And I started this Bible code with no intentions with an access term, just throwing in random coding, shifting back and forth. And this is what I've come up with. You literally have the year 5785 right here, and also in the plain text at an ELS of 16. And that is recorded in Psalm 17, 1, 2, just a little bit further back. But you also have it in the vertical here. Hey tau shin pei hey. Hey tau shin pei hey. And right at the top of where it says 5785, you have the word comet. You have Tishri 10 here, which is Yom Kippur, the Feast of Atonement. And you also have Jupiter here, truncated form Yod Wav Pei Mem Resh. And that is connected kind of here with the Tishri 10. So you have the year here twice. The year here is at the same ELS as the page width, which is 101, very small ELS. But now you have at Aleph, Tet, Lamed, Samak, that's Atlas here, and you have it again going up, sharing the Tet with the other one, Aleph, Tet, Lamed, Samak. You also have the word nickel right there, and you have his planet and the word his sukkah, or his pavilion right there. And in the vertical over here, you have Mars. And again, in the horizontal down here, you have Mars, again, with the word calamity. Aleph, Samak, Wav, Nun. Here you have to transfer. And here again, you have Jupiter, or Jupiter. And here you have Saturn right there. So you see Mars coded along Psalm 18, verses 8, 9, and 10, shortly before you see this word Sukkot, pavilion, tent, tabernacle. My own personal convictions about this, ladies and gentlemen. You had a comet by the name of Siding Spring that had a plasma discharge, literally lighting it up like a light bulb. That was a sign showing us something. And yes, you have in this Bible code, you have the word thunder and the word lightning. This here in verse 14. Verse 14, it's talking about, and Yahweh also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice, hailstone and coals of fire. He sent arrows and scattered them and shot out lightnings and discomforted them. So yeah, we could very well possibly see another plasma discharge between this comet 3I Atlas, and the planet Mars. It's possible, very possible. But what is this telling us? What is our Heavenly Father doing? I believe he's trying to show us what wormwood is, what Revelation 8, 10, and 11 is. And it's a planet, and it's Mars. He's trying to show us this, so there's no confusion. Check this out. Pei, Shin, Tau, He is the word spreading from Leviticus chapter 13, the spreading of a pandemic. But if you add the He on it, you could still say the spreading of 5 and the word comet. Could it be possible that Comet 3I Atlas could end up fracturing into 5 pieces? And of course, you have wormwood up here, Lamed, Ayin, Nun, He. You have it on a couple of places, but this is in line with the word calamity down here in the vertical. And you have it in proximity of the word Jupiter, the word comet, and the date Tishri 10, 5785 this year. You also have the word Jovian in here, Yod, Wav, Bet, Yod, Aleph, Nun, and the word nickel, and the word Atlas, and the word spreading here in the horizontal. Pei Shin Tao Hei. Shocker time. The year 5789, Hei Tao Shin Pei Tet, is also in here at a page width of 78. And connected in the vertical, you have Lamed Ayin Nun Hey, the word wormwood, and the word comet here attached to it as well. And at a right angle, you have from his throne, his sukkah. And again, down here, you have Mars, you have wormwood in the vertical, and you have his sukkah. This is around the time that we should be seeing Revelation 8, 10, and 11, and the third trumpet being fulfilled sometime between 5788 and 5789. And this is, it's there, it's in there. And just a reminder, Shen Pei Tet is the word for judgment, and it's a part of the year of 5789. Hei Tao Shin Pei Tet. We have been in a countdown for judgment since 2019, ladies and gentlemen, and Jacob's trouble will start just 3.5, almost 4 years from now. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with this. If you're not saved, get saved. The doors of salvation are going to be closing soon. Give your life to Yahushua. Salvation is worth it. It's free, but it'll cost your entire life to keep it. Amen, amen. Thank you so much for watching this video. Blessings to you all in Yahushua's name, and until we meet again.
All right, so that's Chris. And what he had to say on Comet Atlas, you guys. So I've been working on a couple, but the latest one I'm not ready to do. That's a star. A Star Shall Come. It's based off of what Balaam's prophecy was. One of the last videos that I did about this, I showed the actual chapter. Let me see if I can pull that up. Now, there are a few times in the Bible where it seems like something astronomical happened. Something's very significant. Joshua's long day, Hezekiah's 10 degrees, the crucifixion when Yeshua is crucified, the sun is blotted out. By the way, it's Passover time, so this is not an eclipse time. Okay, so something blotted out the sun, and then later that night there was a blood moon. Now that is not possible. There's had to be some other object that was in the sky when that happened, and even later. Okay, so I find this really interesting that Rabbi Akiva had partnered with somebody called Simon Bar Kokhba. Simon Bar Kokhba, which means son of the star. And the reason why he had this name is he was born at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, because there was a sign, something in the sky. This is what I'm talking about. Something in the sky, the time Yeshua was born, very significant. It stood out even, okay? 30 years later, the sun's being blocked out, okay? Even to the point where there's an earthquake felt all the way to Egypt, and Pilate himself wrote a letter to Caesar mentioning that the sun was blocked out and there was an earthquake. So that's a fact. The Chinese write about it, that something strange happened on that day. 40 years later, and by the way, this is a fulfillment of Daniel 9 and also what Yeshua prophesied, that the temple would be destroyed. 40 years later, roughly, another sign is seen. It is a star that it looks like a sword. So imagine Bethlehem star looks like a cross, but this particular star looked like a sword. So a cross that's turned up on itself with the blades up. This is what they see over Jerusalem. Josephus writes about it. A strange star appears. Okay, it's seen in the daytime. Simon Bar Kokhba is born at that time. Years later, this rabbi, Akiva, I'm pretty sure his name is, they kind of partner up. Israel is so primed for a Messiah. Rome has been persecuting them for many, many, many years. All right, so we've already killed the real Messiah. Rome has destroyed the temple. Now we're looking for a leader that's going to come and resurrect Israel. Simon Bar Kokhba, son of the star. This code right here, or this, excuse me, the scripture is what he was basing it off of. Now, I find this really interesting because years ago with, remember Comet Elenin, like 2012, something like that, Comet Elenin. You can go put Comet Elenin or Nibiru on Glazerson's channel, and it'll pull up videos from that time where he was looking at different comets, and he was also looking for the word Nibiru. Now, this is separate from Stitchin, okay? Didn't know anything about Stitchin. He knew about this chapter right here, and that the Jews, this is one of the major signs of the Messiah is they're going to see a star, not just any star, not like a gas giant, something that appears, something that moves. A kakav in Hebrew is not just a stationary star. This we're talking about moving planets or asteroids or comets or planetary systems, anything that moves, right? It's called a kakav. In this chapter right here. You guys still with me? This is why I'm interested in this, because this goes all the way from the Torah all the way to Revelation. We see some kind of interaction with the solar system, okay, you guys? But not only that, the long version of the word Nibiru, and you can spell it three different ways, with or without either one of these yods, and the long version. Okay, this is the long version. Crossing right across it, it says in the end of days. All right. Now, I'm speculating, I'm theorizing that this same object, Planet X, Nibiru, Wormwood, or any kind of object that it has a direct relation to them. And I can imagine objects coming before it, right? Because this thing is chaotic. I can imagine we could probably find the destroyer here as I'm thinking about it. But in this code right here, we've got a lot in just a small area. Just one chapter at a skip of 39. You can see there, it's at a skip of 39, 39 here. We can change this to a 9 in just a minute. And these letters here, they're now lateral, will appear vertical. All right. But what is being, this is actually a very famous prophecy. And the rabbis today are even looking for something like this to appear. So it's just not crazy conspiracy Christians and Mayan calendar people and stuff, because that was a big thing too when all this was going on with the rabbis. They were looking at the Mayan calendar, thinking that 2012 was the year all this was going down. Excuse me. I want to go to the actual chapter and just kind of just in case you don't know what's going on here, and read. This is Balaam and Balak. And now behold, I go unto my people. Come therefore, and I will advertise unto thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. And he took up this parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor had said, the man whose eyes are open he had said, which had heard the words of God and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and he shall smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of Seth, and Edom shall be his possession. So they see this as a prophecy about a a Messiah figure, one who's going to come from Jacob, from a star shall come out of Jacob. Now, what this reminds me of, by the way, of Joseph's dream, when he has two different dreams. One is about a field of grain, and the other one is about the stars, where he says the sun, moon, and stars bow down to him. And if you know any, and I think it's Jasper, Jasher. It's not Jubilees. I think it's Jasher, where Joseph and his brother have an interaction. His smaller brother, Benjamin, have an interaction, and Benjamin recognizes him because they're talking about the stars, right? And the Mazzaroth. So if the Mazzaroth and the sun and the moon bow down to Joseph in that story, so we have a picture of what or who everybody is. The sun is Jacob, the moon is his mother, and his brothers is the Mazzaroth, all 12 of the signs, correct? If they all bow down, so we got a picture of that, right? So there's a connection to the solar system and stars. A star shall come out of Jacob. That tells me the sun. We're talking about the sun. So it may appear from Earth, if that's where we're seeing this from. Something come from, the blinding part of the sun, and may even be seen in the sky in the daytime. Planet X, Nibiru, Wormwood. Again, I'm speculating. I'm trying to put a bunch of puzzle pieces here, but you see where I'm going with this. All this information being in one little area is not normal. And again, we can put this on a skip of 9. And like I said, all these terms become vertical. This literally says, in one direction, going from here up, it says the code of Yod He Vav He, and then going from the Vav down, from here up to the Vav, it's signals or signs and codes of Yod He Vav He, and then right next to it, vertical, we've got the Hebrews, the Ibrit, the ones who have crossed over, all right? And then in this direction, we basically have, in that day, his name is revealed, all in a narrow strip. There's also the crucifixion here. If I put it back on 39, this is how I know Nibiru had something to, or when I say Nibiru, I'm talking about an object that we're just giving it a name, a nomenclature. And I'm doing that because the Jews did it first, by the way. I used to say to myself, why is Nibiru encoded so much in the Bible? It cannot be because of the stitching. No, it's not. It's the Jews. They're looking for a star. They've already called it Nibiru, right? I don't know if it has anything to do with the Ge'ez. What Gladerson has called it that, right? Crucifixion. Zalav. Netzlav, excuse me. Zalav. We also got, what is at the top here? I had something at the top. It's not there. Ibrit appears down at the bottom here. This is just the other one that appears by itself. Strange how it looks different when you put it on a different cylinder width, right? How it changes, but it does do that. So very significant. This is just one place. If we go to where Hezekiah and the 10 degrees happen, guess what? We can find an access term of Nibiru, and running right through that term, we've got the actual verse where that's happening in the text. Okay. Same thing with Joshua's long day. There's a connection to it. And by the way, Wormwood does appear. Atlas does appear here. I don't know why I didn't have it. I didn't save it. That's why. Atlas does appear in this as well. So all of these things are connected. And it is why it You guys have been, I don't get this, when I'm doing stuff like that, I don't get to see your text, all the conversation. So, um, anyway, that's what I got for you. We do have Sukkot coming up. Interesting that he was talking about Sukkot time in that. We do have Sukkot coming up in just a couple of weeks. And I'll be teaching. I think she's got me scheduled for 3 days of that. Hopefully we can record it this time. The last time we were in a place in the middle of the woods that didn't have, I had to go out to my car and then drive down the road to get some kind of bars on my phone. It was it was so backwoods where we are. So we're going to be at a different place in the same general area, but I think a little higher up in some places that are not so remote. So we got that coming up. You guys got any questions or anything you want to say? You got a code on trumpets for next week? Okay. All right. You'll be at Davis Camp for Sukkot. Oh, I love it. Everybody's keeping the feast. It's such an awesome time. I don't know why I'm so excited about this time. Maybe it's because my sons came back into my life. I don't know. Things looking up. I don't know what it is, but this particular Sukkot, I'm kind of looking forward to. And I'm hoping to share that with you guys. So we got that coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll be traveling. I don't know. We'll probably do a class remotely if I do have some internet there. And I'm being told that there is pretty good internet from the lady that runs the place. So, all right. Any questions before I close this out for tonight? I'm sorry I had to postpone, you guys. The internet's been crazy for me here. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe it was the storms that we had, a lot of lightning going on. But the internet was horrible. I couldn't even sign on to Zoom. And so it's quite frustrating, but here we are now. We got it done. Yeah. Anyway, shalom to you. Let me pray for you, and then we will see you in the next class. I'm just so thankful, Father, for each one here. I ask that you bless them, that you go with them this week, that you nurture them in their word, that you keep them safe, Father, that you, if they're sick in their body, that you would heal them, bring them back at the appointed time. We ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right. Shalom to you guys.